I kicked my mother-in-law out over sexist comments about my children. I, 25F, gave birth to my twins, boy and girl, 4 years ago, and another boy 2 years ago. My husband, 26, and I moved out of his mother's house before my second son was born, after months of me begging him to move. My mother-in-law and I have a rocky relationship. When I first started dating her son, we had a good relationship. We would go out together with a few other relatives every month for a girls' day out. It was fun, and she was supportive of my relationship with her son. When we got engaged, her true colors started to show. She tried to take control of the wedding planning even though I had asked her multiple times not to. She ripped my wedding dress on purpose 2 weeks before the wedding, because she didn't like the dress, and we had to reschedule the wedding since she didn't want it on her cat's birthday, which she had given away a year before, and clearly didn't like. I didn't say anything, and throughout the entire wedding preparation, I was constantly berated by my mother-in-law because my parents were paying for the large venue. She made me feel bad, and eventually I decided to pay for the venue myself despite my parents and fiancé insisting they'd pay. Fast forward a year, I'm pregnant with my twins, and my mother-in-law is hoping for a girl. No big deal, right? Well, 2 weeks ago mother-in-law was over, and was cooking with my daughter. I didn't mind since my daughter was being supervised, and my mother-in-law is a good cook. But my son, twin, wanted to help cook. My mother-in-law said that he wasn't allowed to, and that it was a woman's job. My son asked her what she meant, and she said his job as a man was to work to provide for his family, and that his wife was meant to look after the kids. I was pissed, and immediately took my twins upstairs. I confronted my mother-in-law, and she said she was planning to teach my daughter her job as woman since she found out the gender of the twins. I was disgusted to say the least. If my daughter wants to be a housewife when she gets older, that's fine, but I don't want her grandmother shoving into her head that she has to do that, and it's her job as a woman. She told me over and over again that it's my daughter's job, and that if I won't do my job as a woman, which in her words is to give birth and look after the children, that she'll make sure my daughter does. She then told me that I'm a horrible parent/woman, that I didn't deserve her son, that the only thing that I've done right is give birth to her grandchildren, and that she'd have my husband divorce me and get full custody of the kids. I kicked her out and told her never to come back again as she wasn't welcomed. My husband is conflicted and told me we should have discussed me kicking mother-in-law out when he came home from work. Mother-in-law just stabbed me, and somehow I'm the asshole. Advice please. So, to preface, I've been married 4 years, together for 7, with a 3-year-old. Mother-in-law hasn't liked me since I became a tattoo artist around 5 years ago, and gave her son his first tattoo. I'm heavily inked, and now my husband is too. His tattoos are a huge point of contention between she and I. She takes him getting modifications as him, ruining the body she made for him, and has asked him on several occasions if he isn't happy with himself, and goes on these weird, "the world is against me" rants. I guess all of the work I did to make you doesn't matter, you hate what I made, I'm the worst mom, how could you do this to me, etc. She has always been nothing more than passive-aggressive, until today. We made a rare visit to mother-in-law and stepfather-in-law's house to let our son play on their jungle gym since he's been begging to go. Mother-in-law was pleasant, and ordered us all takeout. It was actually kind of nice. Stepfather-in-law pulled out his phone, and asked, "So, what do you think of this?" and showed me a really well done tattoo. I said it was gorgeous. He asked if I could do it and I said no because it isn't in a style I'm familiar with doing. But if he gave me time to practice I'd be more than happy to do it once I figure out how to get the shading right. It's a very specific tattoo done by a well-known artist that is really hard to emulate. Mother-in-law overheard, and made a snide comment about me being a bad influence. I joked back, yeah, being a bad influence kind of comes with the territory I guess. I stab people a lot for a living. I didn't realize what had happened for a moment, and according to dear husband, mother-in-law moved so fast that it even took him a second to catch on. The swine had been fiddling around with the fire pit using a little hot dog roasting pick thing that came to a point. She whipped it towards me, and jammed it into the upper part of my arm. I jumped up, and started screaming. Dear husband was yelling, my son started crying. Stepfather-in-law ushered mother-in-law into the house, and kept yelling, "Sorry, oh my God, I'm so sorry, why would you do that? I'm so sorry, please don't call the police, hold on, I'm coming back, are you okay?" and other word vomit to defuse us. We packed our son into the car, and mother-in-law didn't resurface. Dear husband went inside to confront her while I checked out my arm. It wasn't bad. It didn't pierce very far at all, maybe 1/4 of my pinky nail, but there was a good bit of dirt and stuff from the fire pit in my arm which freaked me out. Dear husband apparently confronted mother-in-law and stepfather-in-law. Stepfather-in-law was apologetic and begged him not to call the cops. Dear husband asked mother-in-law why she did it, and she apparently answered, she said she stabs people for a living, so I was going to poke her and say, now you see how it feels, but I didn't know my own strength. Dear husband promised not to call the cops, but said to leave him the F alone unless he contacts her. Sounds good, right? Nope. Less than an hour after this had happened, dear husband was on my ass about forgiving her. He now isn't speaking to me because I told him I actually do want to call the police, and he said if I did he'd never forgive me. He actually threatened to grab our son and go to mother-in-law's house for tonight if I didn't call her to talk it out. She's texted me over 20 times telling me she didn't mean to, but not actually apologizing. I don't know what to freaking do. I don't know how to resolve this issue. This is such crap. Mother-in-law stabbed me, and somehow I'm the asshole. Update. Preface, Lo and I are at an urgent care clinic with my sister. We will be staying with her until dear husband finds a new rental. We are safe. I am thankful for all the advice and help I have received. So, my sister drove over immediately after I called her, and told me to pack a couple bags, and come on. This went down within 15 minutes of me posting. She lives less than 10 miles away. I started packing, and dear husband noticed, and started freaking out, crying, and begging me not to go. Sis took our son out to the car so he didn't have to see it. Thank God. And I lost my crap. We both yelled, we both cried. Dear husband kept yelling that his mom texted him to say she's crying her eyes out, and is suicidal because everyone will think she's an abuser when I tell. He asked if I planned to call the cops and I answered, yes. He asked me to come and talk to his mom one more time and hear her out before I called. I agreed because I was already feeling lousy. A little note, we rent from mother-in-law. She owns our house and lives up a small fenced hill from us. We're separated by some thick brush so she can't just walk down. It's a 5-minute drive though. Mother-in-law came over and sat in the chair looking sheepish. The first thing out of her mouth was, is your son here? I said no. I asked my sister to take him for the night. She signed, and actually freaking pouted, then said, you wanted to talk, so talk. My husband later admitted he said he thought I was overreacting, and that I would apologize. No, nope. No. Him saying that emboldened her. Basically, I called her out, and said there was no way it was an accident. She said she just didn't realize how strong she is since she expects herself to be weak due to being sick. Apparently she has the flu, and invited us over with a low anyways. I got mad, and raised my voice. She started trying to defuse. It was working. Honestly, I was doubting myself. Then she dropped a bomb I didn't expect. You're just so hard to get along with. I just didn't expect you to be the one. Dear husband, ended up with. I'm glad he did, but I expected someone more biblical. I love you to bits though. Dear husband, to my surprise, jumped up and yelled, what the F does that mean, Mom? She looked startled then scolded him like a freaking child. It was so unexpected that I just sat back. She kept talking and talking, then said something about disciplining me like a child, and it didn't even go in that deep. This is so ignorant. If it had gone deeper I'd understand. Dear husband, for once in our marriage, stood up to her. He blatantly asked, did you do this on purpose? At first she said no, then relented. I didn't know it'd actually go in. I didn't know it'd draw blood. Dear husband told her to get the F out. All of this in less than 15 minutes. He told her to never call him again, and that we'd be moving. She started yelling, and he shoved her out the door, and slammed it in her face. I told him that if he was serious about moving, good, but I'm not staying until we find a place, and neither is our son. I also demanded therapy, and to never see his mom again. He agreed. My sister picked us up, and our son crashed on her couch. Sister looked at my arm, and said we needed to go to urgent care now, so here we are. They said it needs 2 stitches, so we're waiting on that, and I'm going to receive a tetanus booster, and some other shot that I'm missing. We spoke to the clinic cop, and he said that it was probably an accident, and basically brushed us off, so we're filing a police report tomorrow. I'm so tired. I wish I could say it's a happy ending, but I'm heartbroken. I seriously doubt my husband is going to hold true on his moving promise once he sees rental prices compared to the amount we pay his mom. Sister said we could have the living room, and pay half of her rent, and if he doesn't have a place picked soon I'm going to do it, and file for divorce. Send me strength, guys. Amelia, my daughter, has a diagnosis, and ex-mother-in-law is no contact. Amelia has been formally diagnosed with autism. She had her initial assessment with the GP over a month ago, and the GP sent us to a specialist who confirmed it. Ex and I are working together to figure out what that means for us in terms of what we should be doing to help her. and how we're going to work with Amelia from now on so she has what she needs. We've repainted her bedroom at his place from a fairly bright shade of pink chosen by ex-mother-in-law, to a far more muted purple chosen by Amelia. The old color apparently hurt her head, and was part of her not wanting to go. We've also replaced our bulbs with dimmer bulbs, so she can turn the brightness to where she's comfortable, or lower watt bulbs. With X's permission I gave Amelia a few perfume samples, let her pick her favorites, and I bought a bottle of perfume that Amelia liked for me, and the cologne she liked for X. They smelled very similar to what we already wore, just a lot more muted, and she hasn't complained about the scents being too strong since we switched. Amelia has days where she's fine with physical contact, but we've realized that when she hugs me I don't initiate it and I usually take a second before lightly hugging back, not because of her, but that's just how I hug people in general. When Amelia next hugged X he tried doing it the same way he noticed me doing it, and Amelia was a lot more receptive, didn't pull away as quickly, and has been hugging him a lot more. Amelia still uses her "do not touch me" technique, complete with holding her arms out if she really doesn't want to be touched, but in the last month she has only used this once on the boy at school who kept hugging her. He was the reason I taught her it in the first place, and once on another boy who wanted to play kiss chase. She has not used it on X. X is also seriously considering a career change, as his current job has him away for around half the year, sometimes more, and he wants to be around more for Amelia's sake. If he does end up getting a job that's closer to home we'll work out a new custody agreement, probably every other week. We're still figuring out how exactly to work with Amelia, as she has moments that we now realize are meltdowns, and during those moments she often stops talking to us, or at all. But we're getting better at figuring out what's wrong, and adjusting accordingly. We have made some tweaks to the schedule for training time with Amelia. Now I take her to X's house, and we all have dinner, and then I leave alone. And when we're transitioning into my week X brings her here, and has dinner at my place before leaving alone. We decided to give ex-mother-in-law one last chance to not F it up, made it clear she was on thin ice, and needed to be on her best behavior, and invited her to one of these dinners about a week after Amelia was diagnosed. Ex-mother-in-law came. She was on her best behavior for maybe 10 minutes, just long enough for us all to sit down and start eating before she yelled at us for giving Amelia autism. X made her leave, and he's been totally no contact for a month as of today, which is why this update is only coming now. I broke and checked her Facebook earlier, and it's just post after post about how autism apparently never existed before this century, full of back in my day bullcrap. It's a fairly even mix of her sharing blog posts from anti-vaxxers, and her personal rants about that swine, me, who turned my grandbaby into a word we do not use in this house, and knowing she's referred to my daughter like that makes me want to hunt her down, and forced my baby, as in her adult son who has a 6-year-old child, to stop speaking to her. X says she's tried to approach him a few times, both in person, and over internet/phones, but he's not budging. X has said that no contact is looking permanent, given how she's acted, but he is still in touch with his dad, just yes. Ex-father-in-law apparently had an argument with ex-mother-in-law, in front of X, over how she was talking about Amelia, and now they're meeting outside of the house to get a pint or see a football match. I am really happy and relieved with how this turned out. It could have gone a whole lot worse than it did, and this is probably the best case scenario. Would have been better if ex-mother-in-law wasn't a just no, and was just a smidge more supportive, but if she's gone for good then why look a gift horse in the mouth? Best Christmas present ever. Ex-mother-in-law was thrown out. So, quick summary of what has happened so far. My ex and I co-parent our 6-year-old daughter. His job required him to be out of the country for months at a time, and it got to the stage where this year he spent nearly 8 months out of town total, 6 of which were on other continents entirely. He arrived back in town in September. While he was gone there was a kid at our daughter's school who was forcing her to hug him, and I taught Amelia to say, "Do not touch me," and put her arms out if he does it again. X tried to hug Amelia, who used what I taught her on X, and crap hit the fan. To cut an already too long summary short, ex-mother-in-law convinced X that this had to be parental alienation, and coming entirely from me. Then Amelia was diagnosed with autism, and was proven to just not like being touched in general. Then ex-mother-in-law cussed me out for giving Amelia autism, and X went full no contact with her. So this Christmas, X and I agreed to do Christmas at his place. I brought Amelia with me on Christmas Eve, and we stayed through Boxing Day. X and I cooked dinner together, and we put Amelia in charge of icing desserts, which she loved. Food was great, aside from something going wrong with the turkey, so we ended up grilling some chicken instead. And right at the end of the meal someone knocks on the door. X has no peephole, and no chain on his door. He will be installing both soon. So when we heard the knocking and I realized I was closest, I offered to get it. I opened the door a couple inches, and am immediately knocked aside. I won't say she shoved me, but I will say that she's strong for a woman twice my age, and half a foot shorter than me. Sweeps past me calling out, "Where are my babies?" X tells Amelia to stay in the kitchen, and goes to intercept her in the living room. He looks like he's seen a ghost, so I know this wasn't his doing. He tells her to leave. She calls for Amelia to come into the living room so she can give her presents. I go into the kitchen to make sure Amelia stays at the table. I hear X tells ex-mother-in-law to leave in the same firm voice that used to tell me to stop talking about her like that back when he was in the fear, obligation, guilt state of being. I hear ex-mother-in-law play the "But it's Christmas" card, and X respond that it will still be Christmas by the time she gets home. Footsteps, protests, door opens, and shuts, not a peep out of mother-in-law after that. I knew he was no contact, but that was the best present I could have asked for. Also minor aside, but still a happy update. He got a new job. X apparently started putting out feelers for a new job back in September, and found one. His notice period expired a couple days ago. He's signed on with the new job, and starts in the second week of January. He still has to leave the country every now and again. But it won't be nearly as much as his old job, only a couple months stretched out over the whole year, so he'll be at home a lot more often. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.